8:17 this morning. Since Governor DeSantis issued an executive order prohibiting a mask mandate in public schools, Broward County School Board has mandated them anyway in South Florida schools. We heard from the superintendent in Alachua County as well last Friday here on the morning show, and she told us an increase in COVID infections and the death of 2 school employees is the reason she is defying the governor's order as well when schools start. And now we have learned that Leon County's superintendent is pleading with the governor to allow a temporary mask mandate among pre-K through 8th grade students since they're not eligible for vaccinations. Leon County, as we know, is in the Panhandle. In a letter to Governor DeSantis, Rocky Hanna wrote from Leon County, "Over the last 60 days, I have stood firm in my belief that a mask mandate was the wrong course of action," he wrote. "With that said, I believe that new data and information as well as student instructional models compels us to rethink mask protocols. School-wide mask wearing is a proven mitigating strategy to reduce the spread of COVID-19, he argues. A local attorney and a former chief of staff for Alvin Brown is joining us now. Chris Hand over the phone. Thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Jen.
So, Chris, there is so much to unpack here. I know that there was also then the decision by the Board of Education on Friday, as well as the Department of Health, which adds to this this staged, response from the governor's office. We'll get to that in a minute. So, last week we had education attorney Ron Meyer, who I know you're familiar with, who argues that the governor is overstepping his legal bounds, trying to prohibit school districts from passing a mask mandate. Do you agree?
I do, Jen, and Ron Meyer is one of the state's utmost authorities on education law. And the point he has made, which I agree with, is that our state's ultimate governing document is the Florida Constitution. Every state government action has to be consistent with that document. And Article 9 of the Florida Constitution requires that public schools be safe. It also mandates that local school boards operate, control, and supervise the public schools in their districts. Add those together, and it is individual school boards like the Duval County School Board which can make decisions about universal masking, not the governor.
So are you surprised then, given that the legal, that the school boards have, the legality on their side, that more have not sued, given the fact we're so close to the beginning of school? I mean, we know that parents are suing, but that school boards have decided not to, at least at this point?
Jen, as you know, there have been lawsuits filed by parents in Pinellas County and in the federal district court for South Florida. I would not expect those to be the last pieces of litigation on this matter. Florida has 74 individual school districts that have a strong interest in protecting the health of their students, teachers, and their staff. They also have a strong interest in protecting their rights under the Florida Constitution. And we can safely assume that every school board in the state is concerned about the precedent that this executive order might set. So even if some haven't filed lawsuits yet, that could be coming in the future.
So let's add the other layer now, as we learned then last Friday. On the insistence from the governor's office, the Department of Health adopted an emergency rule, essentially giving kids an option to opt out of wearing masks. And then we know also that the Board of Education enacted a new rule giving kids a chance to get vouchers to attend either private schools or other schools where there is not a mask mandate in place. Did that signal to you that perhaps the governor's office is well aware of the fact that his initial order may not hold up in court, and this is his way of capturing any opportunities to skirt mask mandates?
Well, it certainly was a departure from the original executive order, which sounded like there was going to be rules that would outright ban mask mandates. As you say, the rules that were entered were ones that allowed for mask mandates but required a parental opt-out, much like Duval County Public Schools put into place last week. And of course, as you say, allowing some parents to utilize what are called Hope scholarships to move from public schools that have mask mandates to those to other schools that don't. I think there are some real legal questions about whether the Hope Scholarship program can be modified in that way. State Senator Gary Farmer from South Florida raised a variety of questions about that rulemaking last week, but it is a significant departure from the governor's initial executive order, which signaled there would be an outright ban. The rules that were implemented last week do not constitute an outright ban on school district mask mandates.
And Chris, briefly, let me just ask you quickly here. As a former chief of staff in city government, I'm asking for you to wear that hat right now and not necessarily as an attorney. You help shape public policy, certainly on a county level. Is this a smart move for the governor politically?
Well, look, given the record number of COVID cases and hospitalizations, I mean, one would hope that public health is the only lens through which elected officials are making decisions. Every governmental action should be about health and saving lives. But we obviously know that elected officials pay attention to politics, and that was another reason the governor's executive order was surprising. There was statewide polling last week which showed that 62% of voters support universal masking in public schools. And there are lessons from the administration of the governor's closest political ally, former President Donald Trump. The federal government's management of COVID was a major reason Donald Trump was not reelected as president. The longer the pandemic lasts and the worse it becomes, the more likely it is that the state of Florida's management of COVID becomes an issue in the governor's 2022 reelection campaign.
We will certainly see. Chris Hand joining us. Thank you for your time this morning. We appreciate it.